My name is Kate Hagen. I'm an SVP at The Blacklist, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the Proof Film Festival. Round of applause. Proof is powered by American Cinematheque. This will be an hour-long panel, and we'll start with some questions from me, and then we'll kick it to you guys. Please get your questions ready for our very smart and knowledgeable guests. After the panel, please step out into the lobby so they can turn this space over for the next Proof event. You can hang out with friends out there, chat, meet the panelists, all that good stuff. Please silence your cell phones, and remember that this panel is being recorded and taped. I'm so excited to welcome our guests, Angela and Aanch. Come on up. I'm going to have them introduce themselves once we're on the panel. Like no step up? Okay. Bold director's chairs today. All right, guys, I think a great place to start is for you both to introduce yourself and tell the audience about the programs you guys run.
Okay, I can start. Is this on? Yeah. Hi, I'm Aanch Khaneja. I work with Amy Aniobi at our production company, SuperSpecial. Our program that we run is called Tribe. We're pretty early in the process. We're in our second year, but we're a very small production company, so we're just continuing to develop out the program as we speak.
Hi, everybody. My name is Angela Lee. I'm the Director of Artist Development at Film Independent, arts nonprofit in Los Angeles. You may have heard of it. They produce the Spirit Awards every year, and we have robust education programming, as well as the artist development programs, which I oversee, which go across fiction, nonfiction, episodic, feature length, all sorts of things. So many programs to talk about. I'll leave it for later on in the conversation.
Yeah, I was actually going to pivot. I think that might be a good place to start, though, if you guys could tell us a bit about some of the specifics of these programs and the kind of artists you're trying to work with.
Well, Film Independent's mission is to champion visual storytellers who embody uniqueness of vision, diversity, innovation, and curiosity. And that's pretty much what we're always looking for in the storytellers that we support and the projects that we support in all different ways. Okay, so Film Independent started almost 40 years ago by filmmakers, for filmmakers. Our board of directors is half filmmakers, working filmmakers as well. My artist development team is comprised of working filmmakers as well. I'm a producer myself, which I think says a lot about the programs that we have because they really look to adapt to our constantly changing landscape. So we have many programs that are project specific. So on the fiction side, we have a screenwriting lab, we have an episodic directing intensive, we have a producing lab for feature fiction films, we have episodic lab for original pilots, we have a finance market for both fiction and nonfiction. In 2024, we're changing up our nonfiction programs for any documentary filmmakers. We're doing, and we just launched the application for a doc story lab, which will be a week long in April, and then now, because we need more support for producers, a doc producing lab in September. We also have fiscal sponsorship, which is a really cool fundraising thing. And then we also have, well, this is our 30th anniversary of artist development, and it all started 30 years ago with a program called Project Involve, which I know that there are some people in the house who participated in it, and that supports filmmakers on a particular track. So if you're interested in writing, directing, producing, cinematography, editing, executive, and festival programmers. Actually, Amani Davis, who's part of the Proof Film Festival, gone through Project Evolve as a festival programmer. And it supports 30 filmmakers from underrepresented communities over a 9-month program where you end up creating and making these high production shorts, which are amazing, and great calling cards. And then I think what else? That's a lot. I think I'll stop there.
That's incredible and very robust. As I mentioned, we are much smaller and much younger, but we started our first year, so we're primarily a production company, SuperSpecial, but mentorship is such a core part of our business, and Amy and I have both kind of connected on wanting to make sure that we grow a program in that space. So Tribe really came out of honestly, it was the pandemic. A lot of writers were feeling very isolated, and Amy kind of brought a group of writers together. And when I joined her, we kind of solidified the program. We created panels, so we do both hard skills, how to write an outline, but also very much focus on soft skills, how to grow your community, how to deal with being in a writer's room, deal with difficult personalities. How do you really survive and keep this going, because this is a long career. And so with the first year, it was really exciting because we were able to put together a short film initiative. And Amy very incredibly funded 2 short films that came out of that. We would love to do much more, but you know, things are pricey. So we're working on how to continue to grow that initiative as well. In our second year, we did more of an application process because we wanted to keep growing the program and offer it much wider. We had such an incredible number of submissions that came in, and so that really proved to us that this is something that we want to keep growing. So with our second year, we have 12 people in the program. They're all writers, a few filmmakers. We have like an author. But really our goal for this program is focused on underrepresented community, of course, but it's really writers who are at that sort of intermediary step in their career, who want to be primarily TV writers and screenwriters, because that's really core to what our production company is. But what we do is grow community and focus on how to be a stepping stone in that long career.
Some really tremendous programs developing for you both. It's very exciting. You know, I think one of the biggest questions folks who are applying to these programs have are, how do you sort of stand out amongst, in some cases, tens of thousands of applications? So I'm wondering what some green flags are for you both when you're looking at applications in terms of folks being able to sort of stand out from the crowd.
I think, like I said earlier, the pillars of the Film Independent mission, the uniqueness of vision, the innovation, the diversity, the curiosity, we're looking to see those represented in your biographies, in your cover statements, your artistic statements. I'll speak, on behalf of Film Independent, our application process. Our applications are relatively simple. It's usually a cover statement and an artistic statement. And I think for the filmmakers, we're looking for you to convey your voice as authentically, in a very concise way within word limits, to us. A cover statement for us is primarily to tell us where you're at with a project, how far you've pushed it, and why you need our program now. So the reality is that most of our programs, I already said Project Evolve, a lot of different types of filmmakers, that's 30. But the other programs I mentioned, like our screenwriting lab, our producing lab, et cetera, those generally just select 6 filmmakers. Now, we get way more talented, qualified people who can participate. But, as Aanch said, due to funding, we can only support so many, right? So number one, and I say this as a filmmaker who applies still and gets rejected all the time, don't take it personally, because it's not about, how talented you are or your work. A lot of it is about timing, right? And so in your cover statement, we're looking for you to tell us, again, why you feel you are at a right place in your career or your project that needs support now. And then your artistic statement, of course, is to talk about your vision for the project, but also who are you as an artist, for the long haul? What kind of legacy are you looking to leave? Who are you as an artist beyond the one project, right? Because for us at Film Independent, we're looking, certainly to support you and the project and have that get made. But really, it's an investment in you as an artist for success in the long haul, right? So think about that when you're applying. So, especially for the writers in the room, I think there are great ways that you can craft your cover letters, your bios, and each one is different, to tell me as much as you can about who you are.
I think you covered majority of the ground, honestly. Really focusing on what is your voice, and especially for us, because we're writer-driven, being very intentional with your words, because we read every word, and working with a writer with Amy, Grammar, really important. Spelling, really important. Small things like that definitely stand out. But again, it's the authenticity of who you are and how is your voice really shining through. We're so small again, so it is a little bit subjective in how we will read things and kind of what we're looking for as a production company as well. But I think, like Angela was saying, like not to take things personally, because it's, for us, it's a bandwidth issue. There are, 3 of us reading all your submissions. So I think for us, anything that stands out, it's really hard to pass on people. I'll also say that, like really, really hard. And so one thing that we are trying to do as a company is also continue to support the people who have just applied, because I know we can't help everyone, but how do we continue to provide resources for anyone who's like looking for them? But yeah, I definitely think the key thing in application is, who are you? Why now?
Oh, and I would just say, I know that we have a lot of applications to apply to. Just double check that you're referring to the right organization in the materials that you sent.
Yeah.
That definitely is something that we'll notice.
Yeah, like read the questions properly.
Just echoing that, I am constantly astounded at sometimes the things that get through that could be caught with just a simple proofread, which is, I think, a good way of sort of talking about the other side of that coin. What are, you kind of touched on this, Aanch, but some red flags for you guys in terms of going through applications, things that will sort of bounce people out of the process that they might not know about when they're putting together materials?
I mean, it's really reading through the application and making sure, is this the right program for you? That's really important, because we're investing a lot of time in reading your applications as well. So we want to make sure that you're investing the same amount of time in applying. For us, it's like, one example, we, for our application process, had asked for log lines and personal statements, and someone said, "What's a log line?" as their answer. So just, do your research. If you don't know, maybe don't apply. And also just checking again, I think, is this the right level for you? Is this the right moment for you to apply to this specific fellowship or this specific program? And then, yes, like I said, kind of spelling, grammar, double check everything. It's really invest as much time as like we would invest as readers.
I feel like we covered it all, and Aanch said it as well, like the typos, refer to the right organization, and also just being concise and being very intentional about your words. Really, you can tell so much in a succinct way just by the right adjectives that you're using in a way. And I think that's really it. I think there's no better way of just letting your voice shine, and that tells us so much about you.
We still talk about, there was a personal statement many years ago that came through the blacklist that did not adhere at all to the format we asked for. It was like written in sort of spoken word format. But to this day, it's one of our favorite personal statements we've ever gotten, because the person was so clear in articulating who they were, what they wanted, what this opportunity would do for them. And like, I don't want to speak for you guys, but sometimes the non-traditional approach can make you stand out from the crowd, as long as you're hitting all the buttons you need to hit within that. I'm wondering, you guys kind of both touched on this, that idea of sort of unique personal voice on the page, but that can be really hard to sort of quantify what that looks like. I was wondering if you both could speak to a little bit like what personal voice and sort of personal vision as an artist means to you on the page.
Yeah, we actually talk a lot about voice, because that is what's gonna keep you going in this career, right? Long term is really finding your voice, keeping your voice, who are you authentically, all of that stuff. One thing we talk about of like, how do you find that? What are shows that you respond to? When you speak to your friends, what are, characters or types of shows or movies or things that you remind them of? Because maybe that's what's coming through. Do you sound more like a comedy show? Do you sound more like a drama show? That's really where, if you haven't found your voice yet, like that's always a good place to start, because you don't want to be copying anyone else's style. It's really inspired by other things that are out there and then finding your own version of that. It is hard to find your own voice, but when you find it, like, you'll know, and then also to trust your gut and keep going. And I feel like people we'll always compare you to what else is out there. That's what we do naturally, and we like to find comps and like to find, how things relate to each other. So it's great to get ahead of it and be like, I sound like this show meets this show. Like, that's really what my voice is. So once you can define it, when other people say whatever they want, at least you know who you are.
I think Aanch said it really beautifully. I mean, I think for us, we support filmmakers at all different levels in their careers, those who are maybe starting out a little bit more, those who've been working for a while, who may know their voice a bit better. I think thinking about, one of the questions we often ask sometimes in our interviews is, if you can think about that dream career, whose career, whose types of work are you most interested in emulating or being influenced by, that gives a sense of who you are. But also, I think, again, you were inspired to be a storyteller for a reason and to tell a certain kind of story. And again, whether it's from your own lived experiences, all of that informs, I think, your voice, even if you haven't totally defined it. And I think, again, Aanch said it so well. It's like, what are you watching? There's always that kind of exercise where you can say, okay, what are the top 3 films that had an influence in your life? And then you write those down. It doesn't matter if they are nothing alike, but then you're like, oh, can you connect the dot in any way that actually gives you some thematics to what inspires you or what drives you? Maybe it's some crazy, awesome, massive 80s movie and then some art house movie, but there might be some thematic lines that cross that help you figure out or better define your voice. And so doing exercises like that might help.
That's a great point. We so often find sometimes people will have a hard time sort of articulating what they like. And it's like, no, that's that's a huge part of this business, is being able to say what resonates with you, what does not resonate with you. So I think that's great advice for everybody in the room. I'm wondering, you get past the application stage, you're ready to go to the program. But a lot of times these programs and opportunities can be a bit opaque from the outside if you've never done one before. So you guys can pick a specific program in your sort of wheelhouse, but what does a typical week of programming look like once folks are sort of in the process from there?
I guess I'll start. So I'll lean in more towards our project-driven programs, like the screenwriting lab, the episodic lab, the producing lab, even the doc story lab. So you come into those programs with a specific project that you're workshopping. And I would say the 3 goals for all of our programs like this, and really all of them, is to introduce you to a cohort of like-minded peers of different experiences who are going to be helpful to you long beyond the end of the program, sometimes even more valuable than some of the advisors and guests that we bring in. 2, it's to propel your projects forward both creatively and strategically. And 3, it's to expand your network, right? This business is so much about relationships. And so we are in a position to help with that. And so those are kind of the 3 goals that we want for our fellows who participate in our programs. Now, for you coming in, if you haven't done a program, all we ask is that you are open, that you are prepared to take advantage of this time and the opportunities that we give you, that you research every person that you meet, that you have questions prepared and aren't just waiting for the organization to guide those conversations, because that will ensure you taking every opportunity to its max. And then the other thing that I always speak a lot about is, this is really hard work. It's a solitary journey. And, I think a sense of generosity is good in that we are always looking for advisors and guests who are generous with their insights and their time. And we're also looking for participants who are generous of themselves, that they're not there just to take and receive from the program, but that they are willing to share their own experiences with the cohort, with others. To us, that's really, really what's wonderful about the community that we're trying to help build and give you and allow for, I think, a truly successful program.
Yeah, ours, again, a little more specific because we're a production company first and foremost. So the focus of our program really is definitely doing panels. It's, like I said, how do you learn all the hard skills that you need to in a professional setting, but also how do you survive the industry, really. But a big part of it is also community, meeting like-minded people who, exactly like you said, it's like how these people are going to be probably more beneficial to you in the long run. So how do we continue to grow that community? And so for us, like the day-to-day basis, it's really talking to each other and meeting each other. So we create, little pods where we give assignments and you get to work together on those assignments, and then you come back to us and reflect. We can reflect. For us, it's also how can we give you notes as producers on your projects? So we do end up by the end of the program looking at one specific thing, but again, for us, it's a little bit broader. For us, because we have a deal with HBO as well, we keep an eye out for are there projects that we can bring on as producers? And if not, then just, again, giving notes generally as producers and helping you with sort of that next step. And if you don't have representation, talking about what that looks like. So it's a little more guided in talking about how to make it in the industry. But we're also, as we continue to grow, trying to solidify the program into something more specific as we keep going. But for us, it's really like the monthly panels and then the events to really get your community together.
Yeah, I think that's all terrific sort of insight. Something we talk about a lot at the Blacklist is the idea of not just networking up, but networking laterally. And I think that's something a lot of people, especially sort of emerging in the industry, struggle with. We all have this idea of I need to meet Steven Spielberg at a laundromat, which is probably not going to happen. But, we should all be looking more to our peers and people who are on the same level as us, so you can sort of say hey, this deal that this company is presenting to me, does this pass the smell test? And having other people around you that you can sort of turn to and be like, no, that's a terrible idea, is so important, as opposed to, maybe folks who are a little bit further on in their careers and haven't had that experience. I want to talk about networking a little bit, because I think that's also a big question that a lot of people have in the industry, particularly if you're somebody like me who's a little bit of an introvert and is going to a mixer with a bunch of people I don't know, my nightmare. So I'm wondering how you guys sort of think about networking and getting folks together, particularly in this kind of unique landscape we find ourselves in.
I personally love networking, but I work with a lot of writers, totally understand it's not your thing all the time. I think the way I started is one-on-ones. Meet one person for coffee. It's not a big deal. Ask that one person to introduce you to another person. It doesn't always have to be a big setting. When you are in a big setting, I think definitely getting in that headspace of meet your person, talk to them, move on, because it's overwhelming, and just one person at a time is just definitely the way to go. But I agree that generally speaking, I'm networking laterally makes a lot of sense, because these are the people who are going to give you opportunities down the line, who are going to be your support system in the long run. So find your buddy, go with a buddy to a networking event. I was at an event where I knew no one, hated it, so nervous. This woman came up to me and she's like, hey, looks like you're alone. I'm alone too. Want to go network together? I was like, yes, that's a great idea. So if you see someone else who's just as nervous as you are, go up to them, make a friend. They can be your buddy through the whole thing.
I want to hear what Angela has to say, but I just wanted to piggyback off of that. I have another friend who is an introvert, and she has given me a very good piece of advice in this buddy system thing too, is that you go out, you just find something to compliment someone on, oh my God, I love your bag. And then you start a conversation in a non-awkward, I need something from you sort of way. But Angela, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I think I lean a lot into, networking laterally, like you were saying. Film Independent has a membership program that allows you to access a lot of programming, both in person and virtually, and a lot of things have come back in person. You're, I think, mostly LA-based, and I would highly encourage you thinking about attending, and we have events like Filmmaker Tuesdays, where literally it's centered around a conversation, but everyone in the room is a working filmmaker, and it's like going to a festival like here. You should make a friend with the person that you're sitting next to and just be like, hey, what'd you think of that panel? You know what I'm saying? So it's very easy when you're in a space with people that are fighting the same fight as you are. So I feel like that's a way to do it when you're in an environment like this. But if you wanted something that was a little bit more structured as well, I feel like it's a good point to talk about our program, the Fast Track Finance Market. It's a program that historically we support 10 fiction projects, producing and directing teams. This year it'll be 6 nonfiction projects. They have their own separate day-and-a-half track. But for the fiction filmmakers, we support the 10 projects that we support meet up to 60 executives over the course of 3 days. So in 3 days, you're doing 20 meetings each, 20 meetings, 15 minutes each. And it's a mix of financiers, packaging agents, distributors, casting directors, development executives, runs the gamut. And so that, and I've been a participant in the program and now helping oversee the program. I love it because compared to kind of other programs, it's not where industry go through a catalog and pick and choose who they think that they want to meet with or who they think meets their mandate. You meet with everybody. We have the execs meet with everyone because you just don't know where collaboration can come from. And even if the project that was selected to be part of it isn't a right fit for the company, there might be something else. There's something about your voice. They may have an open writing assignment. Like, you know, we just want to help give an opportunity for connection. And then what you do, and hopefully, you know, after the 15 minutes, they want to meet you, or maybe they want to read your work, and then more conversations happen. So you can look at programs like Fast Track, or take advantage of being at a film festival like this.
Yeah, I think that's terrific advice. Also, something that I feel like a lot of folks don't do in the city, which always baffles me, go to the movies, go to rep screenings, like see people out in the world. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in a professional context and somebody comes up to me and is like, oh, I saw you at blah, blah, blah at the New Beverly. And suddenly this person now thinks you're like a wonderful, educated cinephile because they saw you at the right movie. And that stuff matters to people. It matters that I think you're passionate about this work in addition to all the professional things that we all need to do to make these careers and these sort of creative journeys happen. You know, I think we're coming up close to the audience Q&A, so this is a huge question, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. Why do you think these programs are particularly so important right now in this kind of evolutionary moment that the industry is facing?
Yeah, definitely a big question. There are so many incredible programs, firstly, and that makes me really excited because I think in the industry at large, it feels like there are more and more barriers to entry. And what these programs hopefully provide is a space to be creative, to hone in your voice, to make connections, and also bring together a diverse group of people who it seems like a lot of the time at the top, maybe their stories are not being told. So how do we continue to grow this foundation at this level within these different programs and then break all the ceilings, right? I've talked to a lot of similarly sized production companies who are creating their own programs because we all realize the importance of it, and we also realize how many incredibly talented voices there are out there. And really, it's like we are in the business of storytelling. We want to find people that want to tell stories, and sometimes it's not in the exact way that gets seen, but how do you continue to hone in that voice and find your own platform to tell your story?
Such a big question. So many thoughts, so many different ways to talk about it. I mean, it's so crucial right now as there is so much consolidation in our business, right? And you think about there are just like a handful of players dictating what goes on our internet, our TV, our whatever device that you're watching, right? And so particularly arts nonprofits, I feel, and I'm especially proud of our work at Film Independent, allows us to champion voices regardless of whether they meet someone's commercial mandate or not. Because sometimes I feel corporations they're more reactive than proactive. Right? I feel like a lot of our organizations have been able to lift up some of the biggest voices now, but the studios would never have taken a chance on, their first film, right? At the same time, I'm conflicted because of all this consolidation. The reality is, like, the state of affairs for arts nonprofits in particular is, dire. Anthony Kaufman, a writer for Filmmaker magazine, recently did an article about the state of artist development. If you've looked at some of the nonprofits have shut down or have been let go, it's just been a really hard time. And it's been hard for everyone. But I would just say, yes, they're super crucial right now. At the same time, I would also say, there are tons of programs. We need more programs. There are people like myself, like Aanch, who are fighting to make more opportunities to support voices. But I'd also say, you're all here for a reason. You're all here at the festival. Like, you're making things, and there's no one path to get there, whether you participate in programs or not. If you feel passionate enough about your work, you will get out there and be seen.
Such terrific advice, wonderful wisdom for the audience. I'm wondering, before we kick it to the audience, are there any important deadlines folks should be aware of for you guys? Anything fun coming up in recent days that folks should take a look at?
I mean, like I said, we just opened up our application for the documentary Story Lab, so that's our only open application. But things will be opening. We'll be opening up our episodic directing intensive, and that's for folks who are interested to try to gain a toehold into the episodic space. We certainly know that there's creativity, but it's certainly a means of sustainability for directors, and it's a program that we've been doing for a couple years, but we've just had it in-house with past fellows of our programs, and this year we're going to be opening it up to the public. So if you're interested in getting into TV directing, it's a virtual 4-day program that'll run in February, I think. So that probably is opening up. We will probably be opening up our next episodic lab for next year as well, a little bit later on in the year. So those are some programs that you can keep an eye out. But just go to filmindependent.org and check it out. We've got a lot of cool programs. DCU, right? The DCU is part of our education programming of panels. Yes, that definitely happens as a lead up into the Spirit Awards.
So for us, because of the strike, we ended up pushing our second season a little bit further. So we call them seasons. So season 3 of Tribe will start kind of mid-year next year. We haven't figured out an exact date, but you can follow us on Instagram at SuperSpecial, and there is more information that'll come out pretty soon. But also definitely keep an eye out on our socials, because we have some resources and exciting new things that are coming out very soon. And we're really, really excited to kind of keep growing Tribe. And then I'll also mention that we've partnered with We Screenplay. So if you are applying to their fellowship, we are one of the winners of their fellowship will also get to be part of Tribe, which is really exciting. You can find out more on their website too. But yeah, more deadlines and information is all available or will be available soon on our socials.
Very exciting. I'll tell you guys a little bit about Blacklist programs too that are currently open. We have 2 labs open, our annual lab. One is a track for writers who are interested in things like open staffing assignments, maybe being staffed, maybe doing more open pitches. That'll be the writers track of the lab. And then we have a project-focused track of the lab, which is for independent writers who also have an eye on directing their own projects. Those are both open until, I believe, June 1st, 2024, so you've got a long time to get your materials together there. We also do a lab with women in film. The episodic lab focused on getting women and other folks from underrepresented genders staffed on shows. Those opt-ins are open through the spring. They're both on the Blacklist website. Give them a peek. We also have the Cassie and Elwiz Independent Screenwriting Fellowship, where you'll get an all-expenses trip paid to go to Sundance with Cassian, who's produced things like The Butler, Precious. It's a really cool experience, and you get to get a POV on the Sundance Film Festival that nobody gets, so blcklst.com for all of those opportunities. I think we're going to kick it to you guys now. I'm so curious what questions you have for our wonderful panelists today. If you have a question, I think go ahead and step up to the mic.
My question is probably a little bit more dystopian. I wanted someone to go before me. I have a 2-parter. It's based around the amount of people who submit to people who versus getting selected or accepted. The first part is from a numbers standpoint for your labs, fellowships, incubators. How many people are you seeing submit versus how many people get selected? Kind of give those numbers. And the second part is majority of the people won't get selected. And what are some tangible advice that you have for people who don't get selected that isn't just, don't take it personal?
I don't know. I'll start with our screenwriting lab. We just had that app close recently, and I don't know, everyone was really busy writing. I mean, that for us was a banner year. I mean, we were, I think, like over 800 for 6 slots. So, I mean, again, a lot of talented people in that mix, but we can only take 6. You know, I always say, so one, let's say, for the screenwriting lab in particular, you know, we're asking you where you feel your project is if you feel like you've pushed it as far as you can, why you think you would benefit now from the program. Of course, everyone can have like, oh, I want to meet people, oh, I need to push my script forward. But, you know, I think there's something where you say like, if you can kind of convey to us why now, because it's just a timing thing really for everyone, as best as you can. And we are thinking about that because we only have 6 spots. We're like, okay, we think like this person needs it now. And it doesn't mean that their script has gone through a bunch of programs and like they need another accolade. It could be earlier on where it's, you know, needs a lot more work, but there's a voice there and that we feel like our structure for a program will benefit. Or maybe it is a project that's a little bit further along that has had some support, but again, what we feel like we can give in the program makes sense. So it is hard to convey, and I think Aanch said it earlier, like the reality is our business is subjective, right, to a certain amount of what we think. And also, I would say, like, you know, I said it a couple times, we look through everything through the pillars of the Film Independent mission, right? At the person, the project, what you're trying to say, does it meet that, right? It could be an awesome, like, massive, like, sci-fi epic. Is that the best film to go through our project? At the same time, I'm not saying that we only do tiny coming-of-age dramas either. I think the other thing I'll say, and maybe I'm just jumping around a bit, is someone's script, it's hard for me to say like what draft of a script should you apply in as well. You know, somebody's first draft is equivalent to someone's 10th draft. So like, again, going back to how well you can tell us why you feel like now is the time. Now, let's say you didn't get it. Plenty of people get rejected. It constantly happens all the time. Next year rolls around. Do you feel like you want to apply? Our application has a checkbox that says, have you previously applied to our programs? If so, which one and why? And then what has changed in that year? What has changed with your project? What has changed with you as an artist that maybe the timing is right? One example, I mean, there's been filmmakers, she's like, oh my God, this is my 4th time I got in, and then she ended up going through a suite of our programs. It could just be timing. There's another filmmaker story that we always like to say. The number always changes depending on, like, every time he tells a story, but there's a filmmaker named Marvin Lemus who was a co-creator of the show Hentified, which was on for 3 seasons, and he really wanted to get into Project Involved, and he probably applied like at least 5 or 6 times, and that last time he's like, I am going balls to the walls. Maybe he did some, like, I don't know, like original poetry, I don't know, whatever he did, but he finally got in. But maybe it just was like, it took that long for like his growth and his trajectory to make sense to participate in Project Involved. So like, you know, it's unfortunate that some of it is hard to quantify, but if you feel like you want to push forward, you should. Of course, there might be a time where it's like that same script and you've been like chugging away at it, you've applied a few times, you haven't gotten in with it. You know, it's also an opportunity for you to self-reflect and say, maybe it's not the right time for this project. Maybe I should be writing something else too. So hopefully some of those things are helpful to you a little bit.
Yeah, Angela kind of touched on majority of it, but yeah, the number, I mean, for us, the applications we were very surprised we got over 900 applications, truly very unexpected. We decided to bring it down to 12 people, but again, it was very hard to, you know, get to that point. But for us, it's a very, Angela's really touched on everything, but it is very specifically like we're a more comedy-driven company. If you're sending in a world-building sci-fi, it's probably unlikely going to be right for us. So also paying attention to what is the program actually looking for. I think if you don't get in, at the end of the day, this career is a marathon, not a sprint. Keep writing. And again, touching on exactly what she said, but maybe it's not this project. Write something else. Write something more. Continue to hone in your voice and hone in your craft in multiple different, like keep writing different projects. Like, don't just focus on that one and keep working on it, keep working on it. It might be time for you to move on to the next one. So very similar things, but yeah, I do think that reminding yourself that everyone really has their own path, and you need to just figure out which one, how to get through on yours.
I just want to echo that too. I have seen so many writers that they've literally been grinding on the same script for 8-10 years and have not written anything else in that time. I get it. We all have our passion projects. We all have the thing that lights our fire, but you have to have a body of work in this business, period, especially if you want to have a career that's going to last a long time.
Especially in TV.
Yes, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Carl. Just want to say also thank you for taking the time to come and tell everyone so much great info on the labs and fellowships and all of that. My question, Aanch, you had brought up something that I thought was really interesting, in that you'd mentioned a lot of production companies were now starting to create their own labs and fellowships. It's easier to find the ones that are like well established, Film Independent. I think a lot of people are aware of Film Independent, but how can we both find those new programs and also vet them to see, like, are they legit? Like, what kind of tack would you take there?
Yeah, the finding it, great question. I think reading the trades, great, Deadline, Variety, finding new companies that are starting, seeing if they've started like I know, for example, Carlos Lopez Estrada has a great one that's going to start pretty soon. Lena Waithe obviously has hers. So I think Ava DuVernay has one. So looking at filmmakers who have started production companies is a great starting point. In terms of vetting, do you know their work? Do you like their work? We, like I said, our first year was really Amy bringing writers together. So we kind of tested the waters before we announced it to the rest of the world. So I think the vetting part of it is just like, who's the creator? Do you know them? Do you respect them? And just digging in a little bit more and seeing, has anyone else done the program? Does anyone else know someone who's done the program? We did get a lot of, someone knew someone who knew someone who knew us, like that kind of thing. So yeah, I think definitely it is smart to vet yourself, and also, is it right for you is always the big question. Even if it's a creator that you're obsessed with who is on your kind of vision board, is what they're doing right for you? That's really a good question to ask as well. But yeah, a lot of new programs are coming out, so it's definitely worth just scouring the web to see what's out there.
I would just add that if you do have the privilege of getting into any program, and even if it's new program, or even if it's a long-term, long-time program, and you go through it, and maybe it's not quite as stellar as you think because it's new. No matter what, I would just ask you to always give 150%, because the people who are working to program it are not making big bucks doing this, and they're doing it because they care. So, and I also find that no matter what the opportunity is, there's always something that you'll get. There's one new person that you'll meet, or there's something about your script that you'll get. So I just keep an open mind and just give it as much as you can give to it.
Hi, my name is Abraham. I'm a filmmaker, big fan of both of your labs. My question, I'm going to try and articulate this as best as possible, but Angela, you kept saying about timing, and I'm wondering, based on the domino effect of the strikes and shift in landscape of the industry, what advice do you have to first-time feature filmmakers who are actively pitching their film and to production companies and financiers, and they're all sort of saying the same cliche, bankable thing? I'm running into that frustration, and I'm very curious what your thoughts are, because some of these companies are places that would traditionally help indie filmmakers. So.
The reality is, it's hard. I see a couple of my producing lab folks here. People are going through our producing programs, and we constantly are talking about that. I mean, the reality is, I just spoke to someone at a large streamer that everyone knows, who was like, we're doing something really cool, but just no dramas. And I don't know how many people in the room are doing dramas. I love my dramas too, right? And so it is hard. It's really bleak out there. But what I love about independent filmmaking is that we give us rules and we'll figure out how to break them and reshape them and do new things. So, I'm an optimist, and so my inclination is to lead into innovation. And so that doesn't quite answer your question with regards well, how do you keep on pushing through? maybe there's a different way of looking at your story. I think, and I also, well, here I'll say another thing. So we have fiscal sponsorship, which is a program where you can apply for status so that you could fundraise, and anyone who contributes to fiscal sponsorship can get a tax write-off, right? So, someone, like as an example, like, I don't know, a rich uncle who just needs to park $100,000 somewhere, and they don't care about, waiting for a return on an investment. They'll take the tax write-off because of what their financial portfolio is, right? And so fiscal sponsorship could help them in that way. We had a banner year of fundraising for projects. That means there is money still flowing for your film. And I would say that, yes, with the strikes, we need adjustments, and what everyone is fighting for is necessary, which means costs are going to go up. But I would see that with the projects that you're writing, how budget-friendly can you be? How much can you do it for a more cost-effective way that maybe that mythical rich uncle, or even if it's just a bunch of people contributing, can allow you to do something? Speaking from my own example, when I produced Chloe Zhao's first film, no one in the world believed in her. No one wanted to give us money. But what I loved was her nimbleness and her ability to say, okay, well, screw that. I'm not waiting for someone to give me permission or give me the money to do this. And I think that type of innovation is what we're looking for now, right? So to your point, sure, the companies, they have a bottom line. They need to stay in business. Yeah. And so it's unfortunate they're not willing or able to take as many risks. But then there are other companies that are. Late Line Entertainment, they put in money between Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's pretty of a bonkers move. Look what it did, right? And they've put in some other indie filmmakers. So there are independent production companies that are doing it, but they're a handful. And so if you can't get to them, then see what you can do on your own, and maybe a combination of fiscal sponsorship and other things will allow you to still make your film. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll just add on a little bit. It is just a bleak time. It's a tough time. So also keeping that in mind that, again, marathon, not a sprint. So keep going. If it's not right now, maybe it's in a year. But someone just said this to me yesterday, and I've been thinking a lot about it, where especially when you're pitching to the studios, to the bigger companies, to the networks and things, whatever your script is, always keep it 80-85% you, and then what is that little bit that you're willing to shift for them? And you don't want to change what the project is for mandates ever. You never want to do that. It's your project. And I say this all the time to writers. I'm like, listen, this is what the HBO mandate is. I don't want you to change your script, but keeping that in mind, what are some tweaks that you might be able to make if you're this is the right place for this project. It has to live here. Willing to be, what is that? Just again, very little bit, but keeping the core of the project yours, keeping your voice in there. But I agree. I think there's so much what are alternative paths? If you're yeah, I can kind of live anywhere, but it has to be my project the way I want to do it. Find alternative, companies to work with and people who want to take risks in a different way.
Hi, I'd like to direct this question to all three of you, actually. I'm a filmmaker, obviously, I'm a producer, but more than that, I really love the mission of your companies to support emerging voices. And so I'm wondering what kind of opportunities there are besides applying to labs and fellowships to get involved with your companies. I know, Angela, you talked about membership opportunities, volunteer opportunities, things of that nature, just to support your mission, because I find that to be also so rewarding.
For the Spirit Awards or not, and then of course internships if you're in school programs and that's another way to get involved with us.
We don't have volunteer opportunities just yet, but I'm sure we will do at some point because we are a very small run company, as you know, and always trying to figure out what are the best ways, but there are so many opportunities for volunteer work, so I'm sure there are a lot of other programs that have more options.
I know all of our programs that use volunteers were kind of still getting back to speed from the pandemic. We used to do Blacklist Live at the Bon Theater, and that hasn't happened since the pandemic. We do an internship program with Academy Gold, so if you know anybody who would be a great fit for that, that's a great place. I also think we're targeting maybe doing some public happy hours again in 2024, which would be great. And then, this is weird to promote an event that is already sold out, but there's a wait list. On November 8th, we're bringing Lindsay Duran to the WGA Theater to do her talk, The Psychology of Storytelling. It is one of the most seismic talks I've ever heard about storytelling. It really will reframe the way you think about every movie you've ever loved. So if you guys are interested in that, we will have a wait list at the door at the WGA Theater on Doheny on November 8th.
That's all really cool. Thank you so much.
She also has a really good TED Talk, Lindsay Duran, if you haven't watched it.
Oh,
She's
so
a master
good.
of story.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Hey guys, thank you so much for being here. In the spirit of what you were saying earlier, I love your polyplat t-shirt.
Thank you.
This is somewhat related to a previous question, but I'm a writer and a filmmaker, and it can be difficult balancing writing projects and then also writing applications versus trying to take what means I have or is accessible to me and just going out and making something. So when you guys are reviewing applications, how much do you balance looking at someone's previous work, if it exists, versus what they have written on the page?
I think it depends on the program that you're applying to, right? So if it's the screenwriting lab, it's about your script. And of course, it fills out with your bio and your artistic statement, right? Again, if you have a real, if your lived experiences and how you tell that inform who you are and the storyteller that you want, and that comes through and it's matched with your script, that's exciting to us. So it doesn't mean that you need to have done a lot of work. Now, if you're trying to apply to one of our directing programs or the directing track and project involved, shorts are important. You need to have something that we see. We used to have a feature directing lab. It went on hiatus during the pandemic. We'd love to bring it back. There were a lot of writers who were transitioning to directing who, took part in our program, and they would ask if we could, because they had a strong body of work as writers. And we're like, no, you need to make something. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone has amazing cameras in their hands. There's a way to make something that tells us who you are as a director, and you need something. So again, it just depends on the program that you're applying to.
Yeah, for us, it's, we don't necessarily look at credits, but we're looking for writers who are sort of at that intermediary stage of their career, and it can be any sort of writing. We have an author in our program. We have someone who used to be a lawyer and writes short stories. So again, it is very dependent on what the program is itself, because if someone's looking, there are certain programs that are for beginners coming into the industry, which is super exciting, and you just have your one sample, and that's great. But I do think at the end of the day, just having your body of work, like we were talking about, is going to be beneficial in any regard, whether you have credits or not. It's having, making sure that writing is really the career that the path that you're on.
I would say too, maybe if you were submitting samples for things, don't send a sample that is literally 10 plus years old. That has happened. I'm not saying old trunk work can't be great. Sometimes, of course, it is great. But if you're applying to a program that has an innovative edge to it, sending us a movie you made 15 years ago in film school is a little bit challenging. To know who you are as a filmmaker now doesn't mean it could be a great sample, but just something to be mindful of. I would say too, when I'm looking through program materials, I'm not obsessively Googling people. I'm really just trying to give everybody the benefit of the doubt on the page as it's presented to me. So I think that underlines a lot of what Angela and Aanch were saying earlier of every word matters in these contexts. I think we all get fatigue from personal statements, artist intent, but please take the time on those materials because that stuff is super meaningful to the people who are taking a look at it.
Great, thank you so much.
We've got 5 minutes left, so if anybody has any additional questions, it would be a great time to line up now.
Hello, thank you so much for the panel, it's been amazing. This sort of connects with some other questions that were already asked as well. Everyone has continuously mentioned, making sure the timing is right. If the timing doesn't seem right for you to join these labs or fellowships, what advice do you have for, getting prepared and getting to that point where you feel ready to join a lab, or what sort of advice do you have on that front?
It's the keep writing part of it, but maybe finding a writers group. finding, that you're meeting with weekly that you get to share your writing with and get real notes from other writers. I think that's always helpful. And then continuing to, again, grow your body of work. So work on one thing for a few months, work on something else for the next few months. And I think, like Angela was saying, go out and make a short film. This is LA, everyone's making a short film somewhere. Can you be on set? Can you gain some experience? Can you continue to grow your network of people? Because maybe they will advise you, yeah, now's not the time, but you should apply it next year, and getting advice from them as well. I'd say.
Yeah, and I think Aanch said it perfectly, really. It's just keep on honing on your craft, right? And then, of course, don't use that as an excuse not to apply to programs, right? At some points, you got to do it, right? And just see. And then if you haven't been rejected before, everyone has a first time. And you're going to have to get used to it, too, because it's just part of our business. But just, it builds strength, and I think it probably will gird you to do more, right? And keep on working. Who are they to tell me that I'm not good enough or whatever, right? So just keep on at it, and I think your time will come. And again, just leaning into the fact that everyone has a different path. Maybe it includes programs, maybe it doesn't, but if you believe in yourself, I think you'll make it.
That's why having a big body of work is so important. When the opportunity arises that you're like, oh my God, I have the perfect rom-com script for this. I wrote it 2 years ago. So when those opportunities present them to yourselves, you're really ready to take advantage of the moment as it appears.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, any other questions? All right, let's thank our terrific panelists, Aanch and Angela. So much great wisdom. Thanks to you guys for being here, and have a great rest of the Proof Film Festival.